surgery at Tulane Medical School in New Orleans. I even sat on her lap once as a child. And so when she was murdered, it was kind of big news in our family because she was like my father's best friend. And because of that, I knew things about Mary Sherman and her murder that the public didn't know. And I was very suspicious for a very long time. My father, who came out of Harvard Medical School, had like the utmost of respect for this woman who's out of the University of Chicago. Turns out that she was good friends with Enrico Fermi. She was bringing radiation into medicine, and she was published in cancer articles. Even University of Texas published a book called Tumors of the Bone and Soft Tissue that had several articles by her in there in which she challenged the very language that was used to describe cancer. Okay, so she was a high-level hitter, and that's the first part I knew. And the other part I knew was that her arm was missing. And it wasn't until I got the documents, and there's a lot of people who have had bad information about this, but I went and got the police reports and the autopsy reports and the homicide report, all from the public library, and I got all of the newspaper articles, about 2 weeks of coverage, and I laid them out on my table, and I noticed that this fact that was very clear in the police reports and in the autopsy, which was that Mary Sherman's entire right arm and rib cage had been disintegrated by heat. And even the cops on the scene said they could stand there and see the internal organs of her body. Okay, this was not in a single newspaper ad. I mean, a newspaper story, okay? So why was it that they didn't tell the public about this? And as you get into it, you realize that there's nothing in her apartment that could have possibly burned off her arm. And right next to that is unburned human hair. So how do you get thousands and thousands of degrees to disintegrate?
Yeah, you come to somebody's house, nothing's on fire, and a person's got cauterized like they've been shot by, stormtroopers. You're wondering what's going on here.
Right, and there's nothing in it. So you have to be left with the conclusion that they brought her body back to her apartment after an incident somewhere else and faked this murder scene. And they didn't want people running around uptown New Orleans looking for the machine that burned off her arm.
And it turns out they were firing radiation into different viruses and other things, and trying to create. Well, tell folks what she was working on. We're about to go to break, but tell folks.
Well, what happened with the polio vaccine is after they released 100 million doses of it, they realized there was a cancer-causing virus in it. So they decided at that point to make it secret and to get busy looking for a anti-cancer vaccine. And they were in a hurry. So they started using radiation to mutate the cancer-causing monkey virus to try to create a vaccine.
At least that's what they told the researchers.
Well, this is what was happening in 60-61. It changes and gets much darker after the Cuban Missile Crisis in 62. By 63, they are deliberately making a biological weapon with this aggressive cancer.
Stay there. Amazing. The book is Dr. Mary's Monkey, Edward T. Haslam. Hope you enjoy the government killing most of you out there. They're nice people, though. They want to keep us safe. I'd seen the longevity products work. We've got author Ed Haslam, Dr. Mary's Monkey. You can go just type into a search engine, cancer viruses and vaccines. It's not just the polio vaccines. We find this across the board. And I know it's not as scary as men with turbans and beards that you have a better chance of dying from a honeybee sting. I understand it's fun to get scared of them and beg for the TSA to give you a public proctology exam. But the real threat is this medical mafia that knows you're waking up. So that's why they're announcing, oh, we're going to drug your water. It's Fox News, you name it. We're going to put lithium in there. See, it's all out in the open now. But the public needs to understand, and I'm not kidding. I've done the research from every angle on this. A large portion of those, the evidence shows the majority of people that have died of cancer in the last 50 years or so, you can direct right back to the polio vaccine and the rest of it. And this is the silent, slow, painful Holocaust that we're going through. Ed, please continue. This is a short segment, long segment coming up. We're going to keep you 20 minutes the next hour with Jim Marrs to cross over on this subject. But please continue getting into the rabbit hole.
Well, I want to just make a comment on this terrorism thing you just brought up, because on September 11, 2001, we lost about 3,500 people due to terrorism. That same day, we lost about 3,500 people due to cancer. The next day, we lost 3,500 people due to cancer. We have lost 12.5 million people due to cancer since September 11th. And where's the fear? I mean, it's
why is it skyrocketing? We need to. Oh, but it's always find a cure, not find out why it's happening.
Right, and I mean, just ask anybody you know. Do you have anybody in your family or friend circle with cancer?
Yes,
they do. I mean, this is a epidemic that's about 15 or 20 times the size of the polio epidemic, but they never refer to it as a cancer epidemic. I mean, this is straight out of Orwell's newspeak. You know, they're manipulating.
Oh, now and they make it like a party, like, oh, a lot of kids at school have it. You're part of the cancer group now. And they never discuss why is it skyrocketing. Again, I mean, if people were suddenly dying of arsenic poisoning or cyanide poisoning, they wouldn't say, let's find a way to cure something so you don't die when you eat a deadly poison. You'd say, why are people getting this poisoning?
So I started researching Dr. Mary Sherman and her background, okay? And I discovered that she had gone to the University of Chicago Medical School as a first-year medical student with a woman named Sarah Stewart. And it was Sarah Stewart who was the MD, PhD researcher at the National Cancer Institute who discovered the cancer-causing virus. And her research partner up there was Bernice Eddy, and it was Bernice Eddy that discovered that it was in the polio vaccine. And why was it in the polio vaccine? Because they grew the polio vaccine on monkey kidney cells. And these are cancer-causing monkey viruses. And they were taking monkeys from Asia and monkeys from Africa and putting them in the same cage. And they were getting cross-infected with each other's viruses.
Mutating.
Yeah, and when they took the polio virus out to make the vaccine, they got all the other viruses, and there were dozens of them in there. And I've got that on page 1 of the National Cancer Institute newsletter. I mean, this is not a theory. This is what happened.
And you've got it all in your book. You've got government documents, all of it. It's just, wow.
Well, when I saw that, I had to ask a question. I said, if this woman is telling us there's going to be an epidemic of cancer. And that's what Bernice Eddy said in 1960 when she got into so much trouble for saying it, okay? I said, she's trying to warn us. Did this epidemic ever show up? So I went to the medical library and I got the NCI statistics for Nixon's war on cancer, which was about a 16-year-old window. And you see these 4 soft tissue cancers, breast, prostate, melanoma, and lymphoma, erupt out of the...
Whenever they have a war on something, there's going to be more of it. They have a war on drugs, they're shipping it in. Yeah. They're going to have a war on cancer. Look out, you're going to be getting it.
Well, what I find interesting is that Nixon declared this war on cancer in his first week in the White House. That implies a certain amount of premeditation for this. And then you go back and realize that Nixon was VP during the release of the polio vaccine, and Dwight's running the Cold War, and Nixon's running the domestic stuff. So Nixon's holding the roses on the polio vaccine, and he knows it's contaminated. Now, this is like the skeleton in the national closet. This is the biggest...
This is the big kahuna.
The biggest mistake in the history of government, worldwide.
Until you read the Rockefeller documents where they want to reduce our population.
I said mistake.
Well, stay there. I want to come back and discuss that because, that's what they tell the researchers. That's what they tell the president. That's the compartmentalization. But no doubt it's going on, and they've covered it up. Regardless, it's going on. We'll be back. It's all in the book, Dr. Mary's Monkey at Infowars.com.
We're on the march. The empire's on the...
Coming to you worldwide, blasting out on over 100 AM and FM affiliates. XM Channel 166, #1 on Internet Talk Radio streaming via podcasts and audio streams. That shows that people are hungry for the truth. Even if it's delivered by little old me. People put up with me, and I appreciate that. Again, God bless you all for joining us here. I understand that Jay-Z is pretty entertaining. People are obsessing over basketball games right now. I understand that it's spring break. Nice weather in many parts of the country. But we are on a planet hurtling through space. Look out at the stars. You are amongst the stars. You are part of that cosmos. You are out here in the boondocks on the edge of the Milky Way galaxy looking in to the core. Think of that magic and majesty, and then recognize that real life is going on around you everywhere. And in that sense of wonderment and investigation, you'll see the good in the world, and it does outnumber the bad, but then you realize that bad understands how the world works, but seeks to keep the good from ever becoming awake. And people say, man, this is really dark. And we've done nightly news pieces with the documents, the video clips, one of the inventors of the polio vaccine saying, yeah, we know it killed millions of people. It's real funny. We've played those clips. This isn't a joke. This is absolute fact. And the magnitude of it in suffering, if you've ever watched a family member, wheezing and battling for breath in their deathbed, dying of cancer. And you know that depending on the cancers, they're up thousands of percentile. And the government tries to cook the numbers, keep it quiet, kind of like unemployment numbers. It's exponential. The United States leads the world in illness, in cancer, in obesity, in every form of degenerative disease across the board, neurological, joint, bone, everything. Now, our guest has done deep research. Separately, I've gone over many documents. I mean, it's an ocean of them. The problem is that there isn't evidence. There's too much. It'd be like in a batting cage and they've got 50 machines firing balls at you so fast. I mean, there's no way to even deal with it all. But Dr. Mary's Monkey, in a human story with the documents, goes over it and is a very important window to understand it. Now, I'm not trying to argue with you, Ed, but yes, I understand that in the documents and things they say, and from the research, it's a mistake that the polio vaccine got the SV40 in it. And then you say it gets darker later, but quantify what you're saying, because I've got the documents where they admit there's programs from cancer viruses to microplasms to chemicals to biologicals to GMO to not just kill us, but damage the human genome. I mean, it's like an alien force was doing this. It's so wicked.
Well, there's a lot of things to address there. One of the things that really got my attention was that the main virus that they were working on with this radiation was SV40. But in that same batch of polio was SIV, which is the ancestor virus to AIDS. And the idea that they were using radiation to shoot inside this test tube that had both SV40 and SIV in it is an extremely dangerous activity, in my opinion, because that ionizing gamma ray radiation has the ability to damage the DNA.
It's meant to accelerate mutation. Tell them why they're shooting radiation in it.
Right. Well, they're in a hurry, and they're trying to accelerate the mutation. I mean, hopefully looking for a benign strain, but they're getting back stronger and stronger strains.
But let's go back to this question, and then I want you to have the floor and really spend the rest of this hour and then go into the next, breaking it down. People can read the book and really find out more. But again, you're saying it is an accident. I'm saying, what about all these other admitted weapons programs where they're deploying it against the population and covering up today what they've done? And you were saying, well, this was an accident, but from your research, what's the overall